So it wasn't just over 150,000 people who went to Oracle Park, because there are others who aren't counted.
Like whom? Like people in the Cove?
No, like people in the dugout or in the press box or those people.
They count.
No, they don't.
They matter.
They matter, yes.
But they don't count.
No, not those numbers.
Please explain.
Well, Shayna Rubin, for example, covers the Giants for the San Francisco Chronicle. She was kind enough, one of the people in the dugout. Well, first of all, the Giants were kind enough to allow me to bring a freaking party of 20 into the dugout.
20?
It was obnoxious. But, he had a class from Cal Poly that we brought in there. And, they even commented to me, we had the class again this morning, and they were like, everybody in the dugout was so nice to us, starting with Tony Vitello, but also a lot of the reporters on the scene, including Shayna Rubin, who joins us now on the River Islands guest line. And so I wanted to thank her for that. And as she's sitting there kind of leaning in and maybe talking to a student or two, I'm like, why haven't we had Shayna on the show before?
Right.
So let's do that. So hi, Shayna. Thanks for coming on the show.
What's up? Hey, it's good to be here. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long while, I guess.
It has. And here we are. So let's talk this out. I was struck over the weekend by what sounds to us in our job like an angry fan base, but not a fan base that has stopped showing up because the place was jammed over the weekend. What's going on there in your mind with regard to that dynamic? A team that's struggling, but a fan base that's going to show up anyway.
I know I don't want to say it's confusing, but it was surprising to see. I mean, the season has been nothing short of a disappointment up until now, and maybe it's just the nice weather. Maybe the ballpark still hits when you're out there. It's hard to beat a nice sunny afternoon. We had 2 day games over the weekend. It's hard to beat the vibes no matter what. So I have to think part of it is that, the team delivered and returned the favor and met the energy at least against the White Sox. So, I guess it goes to show that a nice day at the ballpark is still gonna bring the people out. But you got some star power there too, so maybe there's something to that.
I guess a little bit of that, and then you have Saturday and Sunday. It's like, okay, this team can hit and they can pitch and they're fun and they're winning, and then yesterday happens. Is yesterday more of the reality for this team as far as the flaws and what is really wrong with the club?
I mean, it's sort of indicative of what's been happening for a majority of the season. I mean, they had that stinker of a start against the Yankees, and that kind of dug them a very deep hole. And then ever since then, they've had little peaks where they've won 2 games in a row and then fallen back into not being able to hit with runners in scoring position, just showing a lot of futility offensively where you expect there to be at least sort of like a breakthrough, or they show signs of breaking through, and then they just take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it feels like that's been the story of the season, at least over the last month or so. And the steps forward are really promising. The steps forward are like, that's the team that they're supposed to be. That's the team we're expecting to see. That you're seeing the power, you're seeing the star power show up, and especially on offense, that's on paper their strengths. And then when they take a step back, it's just you see where the biggest concern lies, which is they can't get it together all at once and go on a winning streak. And if they ever want to get off the shine, if they ever want to get into the relevance again and division and make a fight for it, then they have to go on some sort of winning streak. They have to go on some sort of stretch where they're not always taking a step back. So it does seem like that's the story of the season.
Shayna Rubin covers the Giants for the Chronicle with us here at Willard and Dibs 95.7 The Game. Shayna, look, there's a lot of ways to answer this question, but if I asked you to try to zero in on what is at the top of your mind in terms of what is the biggest problem with this team, what would you say?
I mean, I think the biggest problem is where the money is. The money lies in the top 3 players, the Devers, Adames, Chapman, Jung-Hoo Lee to a certain extent. And where the money is not delivering where the money should go. So that I think going into this Buster Posey era, going into these next few years, it looks exactly like how a lot of the fans want the team to look, which is you're investing in a potent offense. You're investing in a team that's supposed to deliver some pop and be competent. And I think that the biggest, most glaring problem is that where there is all this investment is not returning on investment. And, I think that there are plenty of other issues with roster construction. You're seeing sort of a backlog of position, and they're kind of trying to chase offense where they can't get any by, calling up Eldridge and Jesus Rodriguez and hoping that kickstarts things. And it just feels like they're looking for answers where they thought they had already paid to solve those answers, to solve those questions. So that it feels like if I could pinpoint it to one sort of central nucleus problem, it feels like that's where a lot of their problems start, is that where they're investing money is not paying off.
And they invested in Bryce Eldridge in draft picks, and then they called him up, and it's kind of been, in and out and start and stop. What do you make of the way that they've handled him so far?
I mean, I think it's a little bit odd. I think that it's fair to question what's going on with Eldridge. If he was ready when he came up, he seemed just about ready. But when they were talking during spring training and months prior about how they want the Bryce Eldridge timeline to look, it didn't look like this. They're saying, we want to give him just a soft landing spot. We want him to force the issue. We want it to be that when he comes up, it's because he's ready to be the guy. And that's just not what happened. And it was, I guess the reason made some sense. You call up your hot hitter in AAA to sort of jumpstart the cold offense of the big league team, but then you're calling up to a situation where there's no real pipeline or pathway for that to happen. Positionally, there's no clear-cut way for him to play every day or regularly unless you're doing some sort of odd platoon or you're sitting Devers or Casey Schmitt, and you need Casey Schmitt at this juncture to play every day, and Devers, even though he was off to a cold start, you need him to play every day. So it feels like there was, I don't want to say a lack of thinking, but now you're coming up against a situation where if you're Tony Vitello, you're like, well, where do I put him? It's always you're forcing a puzzle. You're forcing him to sort out a puzzle. So it's just sort of it's an odd handling of a top prospect because, first of all, you want him to come and play every day if he's up, and there's no clear way for that to happen.
Shayna, I would love to get your reaction to this. Jim Bowden over the weekend apparently spoke directly to Zach Minasian, the GM of the Giants, and got this quote. Zach said, quote, "We are all in this together, but the lineup decisions and construction is Tony's call." I would love your perspective, having been there every day, when it comes to the Bryce issue and where guys are ending up in this lineup. Is that your impression? Is this Tony's decision in the end?
I mean, yeah, I don't know the context of that quote and the context of that conversation. I think that would probably be helpful in determining what it means, because I think you look at that and I think a lot of people are like, well, that seems, out of nowhere. Not even out of nowhere, but it just feels a little bit out of context, because it really is. I would imagine, that's something that the Giants front office folks have been saying forever. They say that with Bob Melvin, they say that with Tony. It's more the way that I read it, and I don't know the context of the conversation, so I can't fully ascribe what's going on here. But my read of it is that, yes, Tony is putting together the lineup, but I think that in the context of Bryce Eldridge, it's like, well, it doesn't answer the question about what's going on in terms of the intention of having Bryce Eldridge in the big leagues. So, yes, Tony is drawing up the lineup, and I think that that's in an isolated bubble. That's what Minasian was addressing. But I think that, it speaks to the larger problem that I was talking about earlier, which is, well, what's Tony supposed to do? He's drawing up the lineup, but he has a kind of awkward roster construction to maneuver around. And he's not just a rookie manager, and I don't think that's an excuse for something like this, but it's a little bit of a conundrum for him. So I think that it's not fair to overanalyze a removed quote from a contextual conversation that I was not part of and didn't report on specifically in that situation. But having been around the team and understanding maybe how that could have come up, I imagine that the question is, why is Bryce not playing every day, and is Tony responsible for drawing up the lineup? The answer is, yeah, he is. But I think that it speaks to a bigger dilemma or situation when you talk about how to fit Eldridge into a regular lineup.
That was beautifully navigated by Shayna Rubin here on 95.7 The Game. And to be honest, you were not there to ascribe the quote exactly as you said, but I'm just wondering about the bigger question about, Casey Schmitt in left or Jesus Rodriguez in left. if you look at this roster, it's supposed to be pitching and defense, but the pitching's been shaky, and the defense yesterday was really quite poor. So what's the identity of this team, Shayna?
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's something I noticed in spring training a little bit sort of off-season spring training. The described identity of the team has always been pitching and defense, and they want to play to the ballpark. And that was the strength of the team when they won all the World Series, and Buster's very familiar with that formula. But it hasn't really turned out that way with this team. And the money isn't really going to the pitching and defense either, maybe a little bit, but all the money is in the offense. So I think we're looking at that play out right now. I mean, the bullpen, there was a lot of questions about the bullpen, and now those questions are becoming even bigger questions because, you don't have a closer, and that becomes an issue in that walk-off loss in Arizona. You're starting to see, the rotation. You signed 2 free agents that, not entirely sure what to expect. They're either coming off injury, they're coming off sort of off seasons, and that hasn't really paid off the way that you would like sort of like a flyer acquisition to pay off. And you're seeing Logan Webb, he's dealing with injuries, and Robbie Ray, he's dealing with, he's not his all-star self that he was last year. So you're seeing the little flaws start to fester a little bit with the pitching staff. And I think it's interesting that that's supposed to be an identity of the team, the pitching and defense, but it's been faltering a little bit to start the season.
Shayna, in a perfect world, where do you think the Giants would like to play Casey Schmitt?
I don't know. That's a good question. Where do you like to play him? I mean, I think they like that they can play him anywhere, clearly. I think that he is a quality infielder. I think that they would like to play him in the infield. I don't think they want him to be DH. I don't think that they would prefer to have him in left field, even though he's been pretty okay out there. It's hard to say. I think he's an infielder, and I think best case scenario, you'd like to have him play in the infield. But that's you're looking at the result of the odd roster construction when it comes to our hottest hitter is a guy with no actual position. What do we do? So it's just it's hard to say. It's hard to say what they would like to play, right?
I mean, do you think this is headed for second base? Do you think Arise is on the team in August?
I mean, it's hard to say, right? Logically speaking, that makes a lot of sense that if come August and they're going whether they're going, then he's their most obvious trade chip. He's kind of their all-star right now. He and Casey are their all-stars right now. So it makes a lot of sense puzzle-wise that if that's where it goes, then there's an easy place to put Casey Schmitt. So yeah, if it's hard to say now, but if things are going the way that they're going by August, I would not be surprised if second base is something that opens up to unplug the jam a little bit in the infield.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense at this point.